Other books other than The House of the Soul by her that you recommend?
I'm sorry.
Other books. Other
Some of them are on
books.
your reading list. There is a biography. There weren't many biographies. There was one biography, I think, probably, which was not available at the time I began to read her back in the 60s. But now Dana Green, I met Dana Green when she was starting the biography, and I think that was about 40 years ago. And she told me she was working. She's an historian, American historian, actually, but she has now dedicated her life to really writing the lives of women. And she was working on the Underhill biography, and I was so thrilled that she was doing this. I said, I'll pray for you every day, which I did, you know. So anyway, it was published by Crossroad. It's on your list, published in, I think, in 2001. And in there, and then this is Underhill's Essential Writings. This is a good place to start. It's edited by Emily Griffin. Somebody known her, always writes on spiritual things. She writes a lot of articles, but she did a great job on this. There is an Evelyn Underhill Association in Washington. They used to have meetings in at the cathedral, but I went to one. I'm not sure the person that sort of mover and shaker of that is quite elderly now, so he may not be pulling that together.
I think her name is Kathleen Stout.
Who is this?
The Evelyn Underhill person. She came and gave a talk to the spiritual directors of Washington meeting.
From the Association of Evelyn Underhill, yeah. Yeah, there are a number of them. There are a couple of Canadians who are involved in this too. And of course Dana, one of the things about Dana Green as biographer is that she doesn't forget the person that she's written about. I mean, some of us, you know, once you get a book done, well, that's that. I never want to see it again. But Dana has written 3 wonderful biographies so far. She's working on her 4th. Underhill was the first. She wrote the biography of Maisie Ward from Jean Ward, and Denise Levertov, the poet, that just came out a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I think. So she looks around, you know, for somebody she thinks. In Denise Levertov's case, you know, she became a Catholic during the 60s, 70s, as a result of her association with Catholic workers. And she was a well-known poet by that time. She was the only woman in that whole list of, you know, those beat poets, I guess they were called. And she always had a religious sensibility, but she was very sort of anti-religious, organized religion. She grew up basically, Denise Levertov, uneducated formally, never went to school. And, but she lived in an atmosphere of lots of books and music and so forth, and so she was self-taught, you know, English, and then moved to this country and married not well, shall we say, and had a child. And when Dana was writing her biography, the child is a grown man, still alive, and he has a lot of personality disorders. But brave Dana went in there and interviewed him anyway, you know. I wouldn't, but she did. So now she's working on another English poet whom I had never heard of, but she's interested in it. You can't write somebody's life if you're not really interested in them, because you have to dig so deep, you know. So Dana has a whole list of publications in her. If you start with that biography, you're going to see a lot of publications. Give yourself a treat. This is a good place to start. This is like, let's see, it has aspects of mysticism is in this. Practical mysticism is still the first book I ever read. It's still my favorite. I read it once a year like a retreat. And then her letters. She did a lot of spiritual direction, spiritual friendship kinds of things by letters. And so you can find her letters. And they are so English. They're really fun to read. So your task, looks like the time is up, is, I mean, I'm trying to say to you, as you, I mean, I don't know all of the sites where you are ministering, but I imagine some of them have their trials and tribulations. But what is the connection between your current spiritual practice, first you'd have to know what that is, of course, and your particular IBC calling and ministry? And are you caring for the two-storied house, the body and the soul in the upper part? Because that can get neglected, easily. And has this retreat stirred any desire for some new or renewed spiritual pathways? And then you may not want to talk about that, but have you glimpsed God in any new ways? You probably have. I suspect you have. So, with that, I mean, just this would be my final words, I suppose. Yes.
You said that it's the house of the soul has two stories, but I'm not sure if I'm hearing you say that the body is
The ground floor is the ground floor.
the body is.
Ground floor, the biologic animal part of us.
Would that be maybe likened to the small self and the true self?
The what?
The small self, the true self, the human, natural parts of us that make us unique would be the ground floor, and then the upper floor would be our the spirit of God within us.
It might be. I mean, the way she talks about it is the upper floor is the capacity for the spiritual encounter. It's the capacity for God, and kind of the nurturing of the spiritual side. Where the ground floor is very pedestrian. It's making sure that, you're getting the right nutrition and you're exercising, God help us, and you're doing these other things you're supposed to be doing to take care of what? The temple that's carrying the soul. So it's not to neglect one for the other, because, I mean, we have in the history of Christian spirituality a kind of asceticism that could really go off the deep end. I mean, we don't want to begin to share some of those. They're a little strange, but anyway. But that has been part of tradition. Yes?
So as one who has trouble sort of negotiating those two things, because it can easily become dualistic, like you have this, and some people emphasize this, some people emphasize the body, some people emphasize the spirit. So I'm wondering what tools there are for the staircase that links the two together. Like what
How do you get from one floor to the other?
Yeah, like how do you, so that you don't fall into the trap of the dualistic approach, or that you just stay in the ground floor, or you stay in the upper room. I mean, we're supposed to live in both.
Well, you're already aware of it.
Well, I'm aware of it, but I need the tools. I need the staircase.
The
Or
first
an
tool
elevator.
is be
Or an
attentive. The first tool is pay attention, be attentive, which you are. You're already aware of it. The second is, if you think it's a problem, then you begin to lay out, where the problems are. But the awareness is the first thing. What am I neglecting? Having a spiritual mentor or guide is helpful, because you bring your awarenesses there, right? And then someone would say to you, well, the other thing is, her point is you live on both floors, and you care for both floors. And it's human to neglect one. So what you're trying to do all the time is balance. Aristotle knew what he was talking about, right? Moderation in all things. And is it easy to have a balanced life? No, it's not. There's always something, what is it? It's in Song of Songs, where the little foxes are nibbling all the time, right? Well, we've got our little foxes that are nibbling away at us and not allowing us to flourish. but we're giving into them, these foxes, yes.
I'm wondering if she ever uses the analogy, your first floor, it's like a two-story house with you welcome guests into your first floor. That's where you want everything to be presentable, because that's how you deal with the world. But the second story is more private.
Yes, that's a good point.
And so it's your private space to explore, to deal with your own, other things that are not of a mundane nature.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
You might bring someone there if the person asked.
Right, if they wanted to enter into
Right.
a private conversation.
Right, but you don't immediately take the person in and then overwhelm them
Share
with all
their
your
emotions.
grand spiritual insights, right? Yes,
For me personally,
Oh, let
a
me
little bit louder, we can't hear you.
I'm saying, well, probably a lot of people have found this too, but for me personally, yoga is really the best way for me to live on myself, because it increases my awareness of my body and what I'm not doing to take care of my body. There are forms of yoga, there's, but like having yoga, just very basic yoga to get yourself moving and to be able to feel your physical body along with your spirit, for me, has turned out to be the only way that I can balance those things. So just
That's a good point. Now, maybe we take a couple more. You want them to go to their groups, right?
Not groups, but
Oh, they go to
the
private-
silent reflection
Private
time.
prayer,
yeah, first.
okay. Please.
It's an entire body of literature now.
I'm sorry, could you speak
Well,
up?
There's an entire body of literature now in mindfulness. I went to Arlington Library just to refresh there's almost 30 titles in mindfulness, and the whole idea is that in everything you do, be aware of the mind-body connection, that there's a spiritual dimension in almost everything you do. I first came across this reference to a Buddhist monk, and I never successfully pronounced his name, Thich Nhat Hanh. Well, it's expanded incredibly. I mean, the titles were like Cancer Survival and Mindfulness, and so on. So, to me, that is another avenue for this connection between mind, body, spirit, first floor, second floor.
They're all good suggestions. I have to with that. So, anyway, I take a minute to say thank you for your welcome and for